The first success of collectivization. The first five-year plan initially aimed to collectivize 15% of peasant farms. Stalin's collectivization campaign pushed for even faster results. By the end of the 1930s, almost all the countryside was either collectivized or part of a state farm. The second success of collectivization, Stalin had demanded the liquidation of kulaks as a class enemy of the Soviet people. Poor peasants were often all too eager to settle scores with their richer neighbors and grab a share of their wealth, and zealous party activists also worked hard to round up and deport anyone opposing collectivization as a kulak. By 1934, there were no kulaks left. The third success of collectivization. Despite the Great Famine, brutal requisitioning methods meant Stalin was successful in exporting more grain to other countries, 5 million tons in 1931, up from 30,000 tons in 1928, which meant more money to pay for industrialization. The fourth success of collectivization, Stalin achieved complete control over the countryside through Kolkhots leaders and the MTS political departments. The days when peasants could hold back grain to force higher prices were over. The fifth success of collectivization, Stalin needed more industrial workers for industrialization. People fled the poor conditions of the kolkhozy to find work in towns and cities, and millions of deported kulaks were put to work in labor camps and remote Siberian settlements. By 1940, the urban population of the USSR was 3 times bigger than in 1922, the first failure of collectivization. The Great Famine was a man-made disaster. Peasant opposition to forced collectivization meant peasants destroyed their tools and killed their livestock. Millions starved, while the Communist Party continued to brutally seize grain to sell abroad. The Communist Party saw this as a necessary sacrifice, but historians do not view it that way today. The second failure of collectivization. Grain production fell in the first years of collectivization rather than increasing as Gosplan predicted. In 1933, the harvest was 9 million tons smaller than in 1927. Harvest sizes didn't recover until 1935. The third failure of collectivization. The number of livestock animals didn't recover until 1953. So many animals had been slaughtered during peasant opposition that their numbers fell by up to 30%. The fourth failure of collectivization. The USSR was supposed to improve life for working people, but living standards declined in the countryside due to state requisitioning and poor pay on the kolkhozy, and also in towns and cities, where food had to be rationed until 1935 and wages were cut. The fifth failure of collectivization. But Stalin was only able to achieve collectivization through terror and force.